Hey out there in YouTube land, this is Kudu Slayer, aka Daytime Number of the Beast. Today I'd like to start what I would like to think will be a long series of discussions about how to convert any kind of media franchise setting into a format you can use as a world building for role-playing games. In particular, Mekton Zeta as you probably can't tell, it's a system I support. Basically, what I'm going to try to do is kind of go through some recommended steps so that you could, distill what you need for the from the original source and put into a format that you can use it to effectively run as a setting in your own games. These are the kind of the 5 steps I put together. As usual, then you have our typical warning. Here be tangents. So I probably will be rambling at some point. So bear with me as I'm trying to give you information which I think will be of your benefit at least. And again, this is not the definitive way of doing things. If you find a way that works better for you, more power to you. My only request is that you share that information with other people so that we can at least build a foundation together, so that that we all can have fun together. And that's the whole point. And in doing these kind of pursuits. Okay, so the first step I have is what is the concept of the setting in question? What is the general story? What resources do you have to pull from? I've been in role-playing games for almost 30 years now, and back then we didn't have too many sources that were translated. Most of what we got were secondhand, and a lot of those were like fan magazines, which were often had a poor distribution, and the internet wasn't really developed as it is today. Those are some that information readily available information. I'm sorry. Is a practically godsend for these days. And one question I find that not too many people, when they go through this kind of process, is actually what is the goal that they intend to achieve by going through this? Are they wanting to create an exact duplicate of the setting? Nuts and bolts details, or they're looking for to put together something that's more in the spirit of the setting. I had a lot of players who will come to me and ask, they want to play basically play Gundam. They want to play Maricross. Any kind of settings you can imagine, and oftentimes I have to, ask them, are they really wanting to play, like say, Stardust Memories? Do you actually want to play through the entire story of that show, or do they want to do something that's kind of similar to it? That's something to keep in mind. And that kind of jumps into the other question: is, are there other similar stories? I've put that out there because sometimes, a particular media franchise does not give you all the details. It's like the example I'll be doing later in the episode. There are some kind of holes that are left for information, and sometimes you just kind of have to look around, see if there's something that can fill a detail or can help you expand something at least. So that's an important question to keep in mind, especially when you come across a problem. The second step is what are your foundational details? Basically, what forms the structure of the setting. What can your players, the characters, do? What can they not do? Is there any kind of limitation? Like, do you have logistic issues? Do you, like, if this is solar system or galactic wide, is there faster than light travel? Is there faster than light communication? Is there, can they even be told that the princess is in another castle, or home is being invaded by something else? These are kind of particular important details to have, so that it's like kind of like building a house. You have your walls and everything, and you start hanging on or nailing things to that structure as you build this setting. So those are going to be important questions. The next step is called, I would like to refer to as the what are the Mecha sticks. If you're not familiar with older Hollywood, or even what entertainment was like way back into the vaudeville days, a shtick is basically a gimmick. It is can come in all kinds of forms. It's often kind of a shortcut to get a reaction out of the audience, usually for comedic effect. Like throwing a custard cream pie in somebody's face as a stick. It's basically, again, it's a gimmick. And a lot of shows will often have a kind of gimmick. Usually, not out of laziness or anything. It's more something to kind of set the show apart from from other shows. It's kind of like the jewel that it's part of their core that sets them apart. And usually these are kind of some of the most difficult details to kind of hammer out. And the next question is, are giant robots in fact friendship, magic, and time travel? This is kind of a special part of gimmicks or shticks. It kind of stems from what I can only describe as a long, drawn-out stream of profanity I shouted when I watched the last episode of Gundam Unicorn. If you've seen the show, you know exactly what I'm referring to, and that's where I get that phrase. It's kind of stuck ever since that moment. It's basically what I refer to as when a show kind of sort of not so much just jumped the shark, but it tried to push into another level, which is used to blow the mind of the audience, or drive home the theme that they've been working on this entire time. So that's kind of why I put that title to that kind of gimmick, and it kind of makes me laugh when I think about it. And then the next question is, once you've done all this diagramming, structure, detail, and such, you crack open your books and ask, are there any existing rules, either in the books, online, from other resources, that will support what you want to do? And that's kind of plays into the module nature of Mekton Zeta. I like to say, if you can make it roll what you have, if you can make it roll as it is, there's no point reinventing the wheel if you don't have to. And then the final step is going to be to homebrew or not to homebrew, or as I like to call it, witch's brew, considering some of the things I've seen people do. This is kind of be sort of dangerous territory to get into, especially for your first time, or if you can't really take this nebulous concept that you're working on and hammer it into an actual, detailed, linear or solid shape, to make it make it functional. So those are the 5 steps I'll be going through. The next part of this video is I will be going through an example franchise to kind of show what how this process works, and when you get to when you want to do this yourself, you kind of have a little bit of a beaten path already through the weeds, so that you don't get too lost. Anyway, today's franchise, again, this is like the 4th or 5th time I've recorded this video. Because I guess YouTube's having some kind of issue with some of the video clips I was using, so I'm kind of had to break down and use still shots. Today's franchise is going to be Gem Lock by Rooster Teeth Animation. If you're not familiar with Rooster Teeth, they used to do Red vs. Blue as the online comic series based off the Halo franchise. Since those days, they've developed themselves into an actual production company and have done some other shows like Ruby and a few other projects. This is kind of one of the more recent ones. Kind of give a quick review. It's a good show. It's not spectacular. It's not going to start any new religions. On the other hand, it's not bad. I've seen worse. It's fairly well done. It has a lot of potential. They already have one season out as it is, and there's hopes of a 2nd season coming out soon. It's if you enjoy animation and enjoy Mecha, I would really seriously suggest you get this. This, of course, as you can tell, it's on Blu-ray. Let's see. Rooster Teeth is actually streaming the episodes on their website, and there is a Rooster Teeth channel here on YouTube. So those are 2 ways to watch it. And if you have HBO Max, they're streaming the show on there as well. So if I really recommend you watch the show, and you have at least 3 sources you can go to. And also, if you have not seen the show yet, and there will be spoilers ahead, so there is your warning next to your tangent warning. So, anywho, there is, we talked about resources. There is a Wikia on fandom.com already devoted to the series. From what I've seen, you got pretty much most of the information, because some of the information in the show is kind of not doled out that quickly, or maybe not as best as I would think should have been done. But you got you definitely have some good places to go to. Let's see. Alright. Again, forgive me. This is kind of what I've been brought down to use to achieve this goal, because of all the limitations that have been imposed on me this weekend. The general gist of the show is set in the future in 2070s. There is a kind of a global United Nations that pretty much is in governance at the time, and this other faction known as the Union, or the Union of the fourth cycle. When you're looking at it, it's from what I can tell, the Union, it's kind of their attempt of being edgy. it kind of sort of gets into some kind of heady stuff, the philosophy on what their motivations are and such. But basically, it's the Union comes out of nowhere, takes over a territory, and kind of is expanding slowly like a virus from those points. And for the last couple of years in the setting, they have had the polity, or the Vanguard, as the military forces are referred to as, on the run, and the show starts off as where the new hope to turn things around is brought in, as the main characters are brought together to bring about this change. That's kind of the general gist of the show. There are some, of course, it's a pretty familiar theme. I've noticed some similarities with the Super Sentai shows. You got your typical 5-man band, each one with a different color of costume and different set of abilities, and they're, at some point these individuals are supposed to come together and work as a team. It's a little bit more sophisticated version of G.I. Joe from what I've watched, and Cobra's kind of like the Union. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Although one surprising, I'm awfully sorry. Just one second. That was not a product placement. But one kind of surprising comparison I found was to an old 80s cartoon show called Spiral Zone, which made me think a lot of watching Genlock. Basically, it's kind of a similar premise. There's this force that deploys these kind of energy generators across the planet Earth that creates what is a visible spiral, dark spiral that's circles around it, and anyone that's in this zone become like zombies, and the sky's permanently dark and such. I saw a lot of similarities between the two. So if you're looking for something that if you want to run Genlock and are looking for more ideas, that's a source I would recommend. I believe this Spiral Zone is available on YouTube as well. For what research I've done. Anyway, the foundational details. Basically, when you get down to kind of the nuts and bolts and everything, both sides kind of basic supportive vehicles and units that kind of serve what I like to refer to as props. Basically, they're there to kind of be shot at, kind of try to maybe have some function in particular situations, but for the most part, they are kind of ineffectual against the enemy, against the main characters. About the only time there will be, kind of any real threat is when they're like large numbers of them. The polity uses mostly generic vehicles and infantry. They do have some basic mecha. Nothing, as far out as the main characters' units are. For the most part, there's not really too much to worry about with them. The Union kind of is the same situation. They have infantry, armored personnel carriers, and then they have these supportive spider tanks that are a little bit more of a threat, but there again, that usually only comes in with their numbers than actually any ability. And those kind of just getting away or getting away, or kind of push the threat, threat level, or the suspension level, the suspense. I'm sorry. Try darken the mood when when the pressure's on. The only real true threat that the Union represents, besides numbers, is their the carrier vehicles, which is kind of these large spider leg like whale shaped things. They carry heavy weapons. They carry multiples of any support vehicles or troops and such, and they also deploy kind of one of their gimmick weapons, which is we'll get into later. Let's see. Pretty much most of the limitations are, kind of what sort of semi-realistic. Technology is kind of futuristic, but pretty much almost everybody should be able to relate to it and understand it, at least conceptually. There's not really too much that's all that far-fetched. Now, here we can you can start seeing where I'm talking about the Mecha stick. Both sides have a sort of their own little gimmick. The Union has a nanotech cloud. That's about the only real way to describe it. It's kind of this nebulous thing. They kind of disperse around from the carriers, or sometimes characters will have kind of their own ability to produce this cloud of nano machines. They basically the functions. It's practically a MacGuffin. It does almost anything that the character needs at the time. Most part, it acts like a bioweapon. It destroys anything that's organic, like people, trees, leaves, grass. The only people who are not affected by it are Union personnel themselves and citizens that kind of, they describe as going traitor, but basically they're kind of inside agents that they have either some kind of device or something that generates a kind of a sonic shield or identifier signal that tells these nanomachines not to bother them or their relatives or whatever. It's not really discussed too much. It's just kind of there. It's there more visually seen and kind of set the mood as it is. And when deployed, it kind of covers the entire area, blocks out the sun, makes everything dark. It interferes with sensors and communications. It can be used like a smoke weapon or as a shield against like missile attacks and such. In several instances, it's used as a hacking ability to attack like automated systems. There's early on you see these Polity or Vanguard automated droids that as they're firing, you see the clouds come in and kind of slip into the seams of their armor and start hacking into their systems and kind of turn them on their controllers. This is used an awful lot in the beginning of the show. You don't see it too much later on. It's kind of just another gimmick attack. Let's see what else was there. And then later on in the much more advanced forms, which are used by the main character Nemesis, which I'll get into a little bit more detail later. They can repair damage. It can summon new weapons. It can expand abilities that the character already has. It's a MacGuffinite. It it's kind of a little magic bag of tricks that can do whatever is needed at that time. Now, for the polity, or I should say the Vanguard Forces, they bring in the beginning of the show, after this invasion had been on for quite some time, they deploy these mecha to support their other machines that are basically controlled by an uploaded mind. Basically, a human's mind is removed from its body, digitized, and then placed into a kind of a mind frame. It's just, you can call it brain box, wherever you want. These mind frames are in the kind of the chest of the mecha. It allows the newly digitized mind great control over the new body. They're more maneuverable. They can move faster, and it gives them a lot of new abilities. One of the new abilities in question is this these mind frames it kind of generates a sort of like a mini matrix that the characters can all talk to each other, almost like it's their own virtual chat room, even in combat. This allows them to communicate, transfer information. Later on, it gets even more involved in that they can act like a targeter or forward observer for other characters' attacks. Kind of expand their field of observability, and in the higher applications, it actually allows their minds to kind of combine together and share skills, and on an even much higher level than in the climax of the show. All 5 characters kind of break their individuality down and kind of work together as truly one. So, there's that gimmick. Let's see, what else is there? But yeah, one of the drawbacks about the about this Genlock system, which is the general name of the mindframe interface upload, yada yada yada, is that there are enemy characters that can use the same lines of communication to eavesdrop, disrupt communications, basically kind of combat them virtually. And when that's done, that's kind of that's kind of used to somewhat a good effect in later episodes, and I thought that was pretty well played. The Holons, the mind-controlled mecha, are also have some other abilities like optical camouflage. They can, instead of walking around, in their character color themes, they can change to match like forest camouflage and such, or some stealth features that are mentioned. They kind of all get around by either running, or they have a sort of a roller skate wheels on their feet, and they do have rocket assisted jumping. Now, pretty much most everything I covered in here is going to be covered. You can find something in Mekton Zeta that already will support these kind of actions and such, and I'm about to kind of go into what I found, what my general opinion is of what can be done. Basically, you use Zeta almost exactly as it is. I highly recommend Let's Activate be in full play, and that in maneuver pool bonuses be allowed to be added in multiple stages. There's no, you take ace several times. I don't see, I don't see any real reason why in particular machine, main character machine. I'll get into the supportive equipment in a second. Should not have, the main character should have as much MP bonuses as as more than necessary. The general supportive machines, like say for the let's see, let's start with the Vanguard Forces. APCs, trucks, helicopters, carrier aircraft, and such. Pretty generic. You can find rules for something that will fit the bill in any general. They're kind of more to be a utility or as a prop. There's no real reason should go too much detail about generating detailed stats about these things. So there's no point in kind of spending your time on that. The supportive Mecha basically are kind of walker pods. They have basic autocannons and missiles on them for to make them combat worthy. They are slow in most cases. Not too many actions. I would kind of recommend when you design those to basically design simple weapons and then try to link them all together and not worry too much about giving them any kind of MP bonuses, unless there's you have a character, like a named character or a special character, a piloting one. In most cases, I wouldn't really expect much from them. The Union General Forces, I would kind of do the same thing. You can have personnel. Your infantry may have a little bit more armor than your typical Vanguard or polity trooper. Mainly just kind of for their protection against the nanotech. You have your basic APCs, your drones. Those are going to be pretty simple. The spider tanks are going to be kind of the same thing with the support mecha. I would recommend using beast form to design those. Just kind of giving them a whole bunch of 8 simple legs. Just kind of give them enough movability. They do have in some scenes they kind of a roller skate effect as well. They kind of make them move a little bit easier, if not slightly faster. And give them some light weapons that are linked. They do have some entangling attacks that kind of make them a little interesting. That's kind of one reason why I kind of say that they really are not much of a threat until they get into large numbers. So keep that in mind when you want to design those. The carriers. The carriers are going to be fairly, but the main thing is going to be fairly large. Defenses are fairly good. I wouldn't really dump too much into them because they, for most part, they're sort of just there, but they're kind of one of the major threats. Let's see. That's kind of the basic stuff. Let's kind of talk about the gimmicks. For the most part, I kind of a certain kind of rule of thumb I like to use when I'm trying to hammer something out that's gimmicky like this. If both factions or all factions can use something, I wouldn't really give it too much ability. But if there's only one faction that has it, I would try to find sort of balance, or try to try to give, if the faction are the only ones with this one ability, be really careful, because such things can be broken. On the other hand, maybe you kind of do want to have something that's broken that really, I wouldn't say give them like godhood status or something like that, but the you don't, basically just give them enough to make them effective, and if they are, as the story progresses, if your players are, learning to overcome everything you throw at them, then, kind of just turn the tap a little bit more and give them the faction a little bit more power. When it's one-sided like that, you really want to be careful. But for the most part, as a bioweapon, you can kind of hand wave that, because it sort of doesn't really play much role. Sort of yes, sort of no. The role in the story is like, if a cockpit is sealed, the nanites cannot get in. If you you want to describe people disintegrating as the clouds swoop over them, that's one thing. I wouldn't really give it too much to worry about. If a character gets caught up in out in the open and the clouds touch them, I wouldn't really worry too much about it. I just only put like just enough hurt on them to maybe take a couple of hits off here and there as they if they don't get out of there quick enough. Only do something more drastic than that if the character, basically the player, does something stupid. I don't want to be, I don't like being cruel to players, but sometimes sometimes there are consequences, and there's no point in trying to protect them from that. Let's see. Of course, there are some stupid, so-called stupid Mekton tricks that are in the back of the Mekton Zeta Plus book that will come in handy for replicating some of these effects as prescribed. The piracy system, that's pretty obvious. The only thing is, I probably would add some expansion to it, because if I remember right, the piracy system kind of only allows like control of one target at a time or something like that. You may want to kind of increase the limit on that, maybe for higher level characters. That'd be one thing you might want to give out. Morphable Mecha. This would definitely play out or explain, or would definitely give the proper abilities to the main enemy character Nemesis. Especially later on in the show. Basically, it's the whole mecha is an energy pool, and you could just swap, between forms depending on that if you want to play that. Again, I would suggest the way the enemy mecha, they're more melee combat design than the heroes tend to be. So I would certainly suggest the beast forms, with multiple energy pools, especially with the physical detail added to it. They can summon weapons, additional limbs. The nanotech can do EMC effects, shield, smoke, melee. Especially, like I said, especially later in the show, the effects, they can bring out guns, additional limbs, entire shield walls and such. That should there should be enough rules right there to run what you want with that. I would also recommend ninja leaping. for the bad guys, because they seem, especially when you watch the show, they kind of bounce around quite quickly. And of course multiple limbs in their design, so just going with basic humanoid form. Let's see. Oh, that's not one of them. Yeah, here's kind of Nemesis is one of his intermediate forms. How was that his first? No, that has to be like a second form. But you can see they have multiple legs. I'm sorry, multiple arms. Although in some cases you do see him kind of running in kind of more of a feral stance during combat. Let's see, that's the support mecha. Like I said, these are pretty generic weapons, nothing too exotic. The probably real only benefit is that they're all linked together, and so that you can fire them all without using too many actions. Let's see, the spider mecha. I should have brought this up earlier, but basically, kind of get the idea of what I'm referring to with the generic support unit here. They have basic guns and their missiles and guns on their back, and there's some tangling weapons they can deploy to climb up walls and entangle the hold-ons and such. Let's see. I apologize, I should have brought that up sooner. Though there is kind of one question, one detail I do kind of hold out about whether it's a wise idea to use these rules for techno-organics and regeneration. This might kind of really, in some ways, especially if you use the regenerating techno-organics as the full rule set, this may cause the balance of the game to go in a different direction, but this is going to be part of your gameplay balance that you may need to keep in mind. But I wouldn't exactly put it off the table altogether, especially if your players kind of manage to learn to overcome your what you throw in their paths. Now the hold-ons, the mind frames, actually are surprisingly kind of rather simple, and I wouldn't really worry too much about sweating the details on these. Basically, I would recommend the mind frame, the brain box, whatever you want to call it, just be represented by the cockpit itself, since for the most part it's sort of just a weak spot on the mech itself, and once there, it just kind of acts as the repository of the pilot in question. I would give it escape pod to or even ejections. Well, let's stick with escape pod and basically give it a little bit more ability to launch out of the unit if it takes too much damage. I would not suggest thought control or internal automation. Internal automation kind of basically a computer in itself, and I think that's a little too much to unless you want a second co-pilot on the unit. I really don't see it, the way the rules are set, to really replicate what the Genlock system's supposed to do. Thought control, I'm a little hesitant on that, because that might be too much of a bonus for the pilots to have. And also you don't really witness too much effect of feedback damage when any of the hold-ons in the show are get injured or damaged. I don't see that as being really a concern, so I would kind of stay away from thought control for the most part. The one thing that just immediately kind of caught me a little by surprise is the stupid Mekton trick merging with your Mecha. Sort of, as far as I'm concerned, it's simple enough and kind of really represents what you see in the show. So I would, go with this rule as written, but there is some limitations they do talk about. They don't actually give any hard numbers. That's kind of one of the annoying things about what resources I've looked into. And when you watch a show, they don't say like, well, they say that you cannot, the uploaded mind cannot stay in the mind frame for too long, because otherwise eventually starts deteriorating, well, not so much deteriorating, sort of evolving into a different state so that you can't download it back into the mind. And or in some cases they suggest there's a way that the mind, while uploaded, can burn out. They don't say like maximum time is like in say like in the other anime Mold Diver, where the characters can only use their power suit for like 600 seconds. They don't give a hard number on that. And then the further complication with time limits is that they say that the emotional state can shorten the time that the pilot can be in the machine. And there's another thing about sort of from the Bob verse, We Are Legion, We Are Bob. If you haven't read those books, they talk about frame jacking, which basically where you increase the processing speed of the mind as it's in the machine, and that can shorten the duration of how long the pilot can be there. So they don't give you numbers on that. As a GM, you'll probably want to give that consideration, and then to kind of reflect the shared network ability of the Genlock system, I would almost kind of give, while the pilots are in the mind frames, kind of a telepathy as kind of a freebie for that's kind of a you may give it a base skill level for each character, or some characters may have different levels in the ability. When they're in this state, that's up to you. It's just kind of a quick and simple way of reflecting the shared network that the characters have. Let's see, it's pretty much about it, except for what points I mentioned. There's not really too much you have to worry about homebrewing for this show. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I picked this franchise, just as a simple start. So we don't get our feet too wet diving into something that gets a little messy. So it's like some other shows I want to do later on in the series. But yeah, that's this is the how I would run Genlock as a role-playing game or setting. Pretty much everything is straightforward. Mekton Zeta already has most rules that will represent what you see in the show. There are stats for generic vehicles. The only thing you probably will have to design are the support mecha and the some of the larger carrier aircraft. Overall, it's again, it's pretty straightforward. It's a simple concept, and kind of is a good demonstration of how durable and expensive that Mekton Zeta can be. So anyway, I'm going to sign the show off, and hopefully I can get up to YouTube with no other more problems. And so It's one thing after another today. Hopefully you'll see the show in a couple of minutes, and I'll have another episode up pretty soon. If you have any comments or anything, please leave them down below. Hit the subscribe button if you like what you see. Have questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll catch you guys next time. Have a good day. Where's your dead mouse? There it is. Hey.